Good morning, Guam. Viva Mekulis. All right, good. That's the spirit. We're all the way live from the People's House here at the Guam Congress Building at in our island's capital of Agatna for this roundtable hearing with the Guam Department of Education and the Committee on Education, Public Safety, and the Arts. This public hearing will focus on GDOE, Typhoon Mawar damage and recovery status, and I'm pretty sure we'll also touch on a few other topics. But I did want to, first of all, welcome all of our school staff here. I know we have a bunch of principals and assistant principals from across the district, so buenas and welcome to the People's House here at the Guam Congress Building. We're also joined by my colleagues, Vice Chair for the Committee on Education, Public Safety, and the Arts, Senator Chris Duenas. Good morning, Senator. And also Speaker Therese Terlahi. I'm pretty sure we'll get more colleagues in as the hearing progresses. We're also joined here. Oh, there you go, Senator Joanne Brown. Good morning. Also joined, of course, by the management of the Guam Department of Education. And I know that we're all busy kind of responding to Typhoon Mawar. So I did want to wish a happy birthday to Hannah Gutierrez. Hannah Gutierrez. And so happy birthday on you. I've lost track. I know you were at Agana Heights. Where are you now? Astumbo. So definitely working very hard up at Astumbo Middle School. And happy birthday on you. And so, of course, we do want to, I'm not saying let's rush through this thing, but I understand that there's a lot of on all of our plates. So if we could just get right into it. This hearing is called to order at 9:17 Chamorro Standard Time. Notice of the hearing was disseminated to all local media outlets on May 31st, 2023, with a second notice provided on June 5th, 2023. Notice of the hearing was also made known on the Guam Legislature's website and the Government of Guam Public Notices portal. This morning, the committee is holding a roundtable hearing to discuss the Guam Department of Education, Typhoon Mawar damage and recovery status. Again, welcome to my colleagues. General rules of conduct, you guys know the deal. Individuals testifying shall first be recognized by the chair before speaking and shall state their name for record-keeping purposes. Questions and testimony shall be confined to the substance or nature of the agenda. Personal inference as to the character or motive of any senator or individual testifying is not permitted. The chair of the committee may order the removal from a hearing any member of a legislatura in Guam who fails to observe proper decorum pursuant to our legislature's standing rules. And so, again, we'll just go ahead and throw it over to Acting Superintendent Judy Wampak. Good morning.
Buenas, can you hear me? Oh, buenas, then half a day. Good morning, Senators, Senator Barnett, Speaker Terlahi, Senator Duenas, and Senator Brown. Thank you very much for this opportunity to keep our people, or to inform our families in particular, about the condition of our schools. You know, when we found out about this, we're all saying, oh my gosh, you know, we're right in the midst of trying to clean up, and yet we have to come to the legislature. But then I like to look at it on the brighter side, because people need to know, and the media has been out, and they have not heard from us. So, and I'm glad then that you're doing this as a roundtable meeting, and more importantly, to be able to have this then go online, go live. So thank you for that. Aside from that, I'd like to especially thank my management team who are here with me, who have worked tirelessly also to keep our schools running, to keep our shelters running, to keep our central office running. But last but not least, and this is really very important, are all of these principals and assistant principals behind us. They are the backbone of our schools. Our DOE has been assigned to be the first tier whenever there's a typhoon. It's been always that way. And that meant, of course, opening our schools. So it is our principals that I give, and our assistant principals that I give accolades to, who's done their part. Everyone. And you'll find that some of us are all getting sick, some because we're not getting enough rest. Some of us already are hallucinating because we still haven't gotten enough sleep. You know, some of us are losing weight because we haven't been able to eat, you know, foods. And some of us are literally going crazy and getting mad because of the entire condition of our island and our schools. But with that said, though, I want you to know is that our people are working every day in spite of the fact that we don't have water and power in our schools. in spite of the fact that although we may be given generators because we haven't used them for 20 years, then we're finding that they're no longer operational, in spite of the fact that we have water tanks also, and then to only find out that the pipes or the lines are just not working, or that there are no deliveries. And we've been really making do with what we have. And thank you, yes, thank you so much.
Thank you for that, Superintendent.
Yeah. So,
Yeah, and sorry, if we could just give us a second. AV, we can't hear, so I'm not sure if that's a volume issue on the acting superintendent's microphone.
oh, yes.
Okay, there you go.
Okay.
Okay,
Oh,
thank you.
all
Yeah,
right,
and we
yes.
do definitely
Okay.
want to recognize the hard work of the Guam Department of Education. I mean, I've always said it's the hardest working agency in the government of Guam, and I too had those same concerns in calling for this hearing. But what I have done is go around, and I'm really impressed with the response and the rate of the recovery of the Guam Department of Education schools. I mean, I have seen not only principals, assistant principals working hard, but all the school staff as well. I mean, they are picking up chainsaws, they're picking up machetes, they got the rake, they got the mops, and it really is all hands on deck. So definitely the entire department from top to bottom is to be commended right now. So we'll check your mic again, and then please proceed. But thank you again,
Yes.
ma'am.
Can you hear me now? So what we're going to do is to give you a bird's eye view of what really has been happening at our schools since the typhoon. And these are the 4 areas that we will cover for you. The shelter management and the transition to Tier 3. So as I told you earlier, Tier 1 are the schools. Tier 2, the mayors are supposed to take over. And then Tier 3 is where the government now would actually shelter these individuals for a longer period of time. And that will be presented by Ms. Erica Cruz. Typhoon recovery for schools and central office. I will have Joe Sanchez, my other deputy, also reporting on that. Maintenance of regular operations. I have Frank, Erica, and Joe. Normally it would be Chris, but Chris has been maintaining his post at the rack, poor guy, every day, and he's actually sick today, unable to come. The last will be major initiatives and next steps, and that will be Joe and I. So without any further ado, I'd like to then ask Ms. Erica to please start with the shelter management and transition to Tier 3 shelters.
Good morning, Senators. Before I begin, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank our, like Dr. Judy had indicated, thank our hardworking employees of the Guam Department of Education. They've been manning the shelters since May 23rd. And many of these individuals, though they are working, their homes have been trashed. I mean, you know, they're living in situations where, you know, their homes have been destroyed as well, yet they still continue to come to work. And I would like to recognize our DOE employees. I also like to recognize the leadership of our school administrators throughout this devastation, I would call it. They play 2 roles: running the schools, and also shelter managers. And so it's been a very difficult, I don't know how many days it's been, but we've taken on the Tier 1 and Tier 2 responsibilities. And so we started opening our shelters May 23rd at 8 a.m. in the morning. And when we started May 25th, we had approximately 1,350 shelterees at 12 of our shelters. To date, we have 3 shelters that are open, Astumbo Middle School with 235 shelterees, Maria Ujoa has 251, and Weddingale has 212 shelterees, a total as of today of 698. Of that 698, 590 shelterees are needing Tier 3 supports, and that's 104 family units. Currently, we started off with 144 employees working a 8-hour shift, 3 shifts, and we're down to 60. We pulled our school administrators from shelter duties so they can focus on recovery of school so that we can start school, fingers crossed, August 9th. And then we scaled back, like I had indicated, we scaled back our numbers, and we're working with 60 people on shelter duty. We are currently working with the American Red Cross. We have identified a warehouse in Tamuning, SDA Road, which will be able to house 500 shelterees. They are currently registering these individuals. We are moving Maria Ujoa first and then Astumbo Elementary. And so the American Red Cross is currently at these schools registering these individuals. We don't know when we'll be open, when we can get the green light to open. Yesterday we had some issues with the porta potties, as well as the hand washing stations and showers tapping into GWA water line, but we were able to resolve that issue. And so we are hoping that we will be able to house at least 500 or close Astumbo Elementary and Maria Ujoa and move them to our Tier 3 shelters. But take note that we did take on the Tier 2 responsibility. The mayors were not able to take on the responsibility of taking on the Tier 2 because the gyms were just not adequate for the shelterees. So the Department of Education has taken on the responsibility of Tier 1 and Tier 2. We are currently working with American Red Cross and FEMA in transitioning into Tier 3. So if you have any questions for me, I'll be able to answer.
Thank you, Erica. We'll hold questions from my colleagues until after all the reports are in. So thank you, Ms. Erica.
Thank you. Good morning, Senators. So I'll be covering the typhoon recovery for schools and central offices. So we've asked the schools and division heads to submit really an early damage assessment Friday, May 26th. So we were able to use that and start our review during that time, and we submitted those numbers as well to Homeland Security. Then just this past Friday, June 2nd, we have our official preliminary damage assessments that were due. These are the forms that will be turned into Homeland Security, but we're also using the same forms to determine the actual needs at the school sites. So these are currently now with our facilities and maintenance team. I want to acknowledge the presence of our facilities manager, Mr. Phil Toves, and working with him is Mr. Sean Monforte, who kind of leads that entire team. What's happening now is they're going to be reviewing what's been submitted by the schools, and we're using the same tiers that we're using during public health, public health inspections. As you know, the first part is Tier 1, which is anything that the school can do with their current resources. So all those people that you saw out there raking and mopping and whatnot, that's all Tier 1 work. It's work that they can handle on their own at the school site. Tier 2 is already moving into needing facilities and maintenance. So there's a process where they submit their request to facilities and maintenance, and then they'll do their prioritization and send teams out. But we also have a lot of help, not only currently, but expected from the other government agencies. So we maintain ESF unit at the RAC up at the Emergency Operations Center. So whenever we need something, we're still able to put in those famous DLAN tickets for those requests. So we actually have a team from facilities looking at the requests from the schools. Anything that we cannot do at the school level, we'll be requesting from the EOC, and there's already been requests sent in there. In the longer notes that you see some examples, mold mitigation, as well as large trees that the school just can't cut on their own and need to have moved. Then lastly are the Tier 3 items. We're really looking at this closely because Tier 3 is basically, we can't handle it in DOE and we can't handle it in the government. Those are really designed for the major items that were meant to be under our capital improvement projects. So part of what we're happy about, and again, I'm going to have Frank later on and Dr. Wampat talk more about this, but in our preliminary review of our damage assessments, a lot of this work can be covered through our ARP funding that has already been requested. So for example, we've already worked with requesting for health and safety. So cleaning supplies and things like that for the classroom, for the school, were already covered under our federal grants. So if we move forward with those purchases, those will be able to help us. Also, some of the major damage, for example, broken doors, broken windows, and the roofing, those are already approved under our current ARP funding, and were already part of our CIP project. So the idea is, well, we were going to fix them anyway, so we're going to use them, use that same funding to support that. And again, I believe Dr. Wampet and Deputy Kuperners have a meeting with US Ed just to make sure that our interpretation is correct in case they have any concerns. I'll leave this to you. I won't read through it, but you see what our preliminary top 10 items are. It's probably the same for most households, but we did ask them to look at the top 10 items, and we're going to continue to review and prioritize with the F&M team.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you.
Half a day. Good morning, Senators. Franklin Kupners, Acting Deputy of Finance and Administrative Services. So we transition to our central divisions, and what I can say just briefly again is our GDOE Central is maintaining regular operations. On the declaration of Core 4, central offices were swift in taking action to ensure that their respective divisions were operational. And as you can see highlighted in that handout that's presented to you, there's some key areas that we want to highlight for this morning's discussion. Some of the key issues that we had to address, as you're aware, during the typhoon was payroll became an issue. We experienced a delayed payroll after the onset of the typhoon, and then it had delayed a couple days until we actually had the financial systems in place to post those transactions. So one of the things we did when we stood up our central office operations was ensure that our payroll divisions was on top of processing. And I'm happy to say with the hard work of our comptroller and our chief payroll officer and the team that we are going to be timely in our payrolls moving forward, and we don't expect another delay in any of our payroll processing. Other key issues in terms of our central office support is human resources is operational. Again, we continue to process hiring, personnel services, separations. One of the big things that they're tasked with right now and tackling is continuing the processing of our merit bonuses. We're continuing in that motion. I'm hopeful that we are successful in completing that target deadline of this week or no later than next week. The other thing is we do have a job fair scheduled for June 16, and we want to make sure that from a staffing standpoint, we are ready for a school year, ready to support the direct support of all the needs of the school district. Lastly, one of the critical issues as we were hit with the storm and coming out of and emerging from the storm is our procurement division. As you can see, there is an emergency procurement that was mentioned with GDOE shelters specifically. And as Joe mentioned, we did have ongoing procurements relative to facilities and maintenance and CIP that cover a lot of the initial assessments that are listed in the items that are presented in this presentation. One of the key things that we're doing is making sure that we sustain our momentum in processing our requisitions, cognizant of the expiration dates of all federal grants, but then also we are line item separating any typhoon-related expenses. Again, we are critical to standing up that procurement division to get the direct support for the services needed related to typhoon, but we're also not losing sight of the fact that we are on a straight time crunch to make sure that we continue to process for our lapsing grants. And then lastly, one of the key things that we have to do as a district is everything from the central office is operated, and even as we operate our businesses, GDOE is run by our munis. So mission one for us to restore central operation was getting up our server, getting up our system, so that we can continue to process everything from our business operation standpoint. This includes payroll, this includes procurement, this includes HR, this includes monitoring of our assets, transacting for all our grants. So that is right now, the challenge that we're having with that is we're still on generator power. So we have a contract where we're trying to extend and make sure that we have the fuel services, but we need to maintain supply to our server. We need to make sure that we have a contingent plan if anything were to go out in our system, and we do have one in place. So I'm happy to say that in terms of GDOE's operation and support for our school district and our administrators here in the schools, we are up and running and we are moving to support. Again, key things for payroll, HR is continuing the process, payroll will be timely, and procurement is moving forth, not only in the regular procurements, but also tackling some of these items specifically related to typhoon-related damages. And with that, I'll turn it back to Deputy Erica and Joe.
Thank you, Frank.
Thank you. As far as closing out of the school year, we were caught right in the middle of the storm, so our school administrators were not able to complete the closing of the school year. We rely on our student management system called PowerSchool to input student grades. So the teachers are currently in the process of inputting grades where there's Wi-Fi and power to be able to do that. School administrators continue to do teacher clearances. That's why we've pulled them out of shelter duty to be able to do that, and as well as employee evaluations, specifically our PTEP, which is our professional teacher evaluation program or plan. You know, typically at this time, we're working on the opening of the following school year. So we are kind of behind schedule. However, we are working concurrently to close out the school year 22-23 and opening school year 23-24 with the development of our master schedule. I know we do have a teacher job fair plan sometime in June. I would defer that to Mr. Cooperners. He would, I don't know the date of that. However, we are looking at, do you guys know the date? June 16th is the proposed date for our teacher job fair, which will be at hopefully Okadu High School. And then graduation, we had a meeting with our school administrators, our high school principals on Monday, and I'm happy to say that it's not going to be a grab and go. It is going to be a traditional in-person graduation. And so it's going to start off with John F. Kennedy High School on June 15th at their JFK courtyard from 3 to 5 p.m. If you're not invited, don't feel bad. No, I'm just kidding. You're more than invited. We're trying to make it as simple as possible and as short as possible. It's going to be, I said it to the governor and the lieutenant governor, and they said that, hey, don't be offended if we don't show up either. So it's going to be there. It's going to be as short as possible, 2 hours. So it's going to be between. And it's going to be all at John F. Kennedy High School, just to let you know. It'll be June 15th through June 27th. JP Torres will be the last school to be having their graduation. And so John F. Kennedy is June 15th, and we'll do a presser on this, giving you guys the dates and times. We have 3 to 5 in the afternoon, and we also have 9 to 11. So it varies from school to school. However, the facility will be at John F. Kennedy Courtyard.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms.
And they
Erica.
do have water and power, and currently they are being inspected by public health because of Public Law 37-4.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. For summer school, For summer school, as you know, we were already planning to have online summer school because the schools were being cleaned before the school year. But because of all that has happened, we're downscaling it quite a bit. So for the high schools, they will continue to be online, but their priority will be really graduating seniors. So any student who needs credits, 1 to 2 credits, in order to graduate this summer will be the priority. And if there's any additional teachers and additional requests from students, they will take it from there. For a pre-K to high school, the sign up was really low. I mean, when we, like, for example, face-to-face summer school for the last 2 years was 3,500, and then it increased to 4,500. This year, the sign up was less than 500, and even at that was, nobody wants to do online, you know, so that's something that we kind of know. So what we're going to do is it's going to be face-to-face. We're going to hire those same teachers to do the shelters. So if you visited the shelters, and we've all had a chance to visit them, there's hundreds of students that are, you know, just kind of finding something to do. So we're recruiting teachers to actually have, we can't call it a summer camp because it's supposed to be academic with the funding, so we're calling it like a summer activities event thing. So we'll be having some summer activities for students who are in the shelters. And even if we transition to Tier 3, we would just have our teachers go there, so they don't have to be in a DOE school.
Just like to let you know on the major initiatives and next steps. So my understanding is Dr. Swanson, the new superintendent, arrived last night, so he's on island. And we are preparing, you know, reports to give him for the transition. But my understanding also is that he's actually been, you know, reading up, going on our Facebook, listening to any sessions here. So he's, you know, keeping abreast of what's going on. The second thing is the public health inspections. As you know, that prior to the storm, we needed to have our schools inspected before the opening of the new school year. We, on June the 30th, all of our schools will no longer have a permit to enter our campuses because those permits expires. Our understanding also is that if they are able, with the one team that they have, to go and inspect all of our schools, all 41 schools, that it would take them up to November to be able to go in and do the inspections. We have some really major concerns that even prior to the storm, much less now after the storm. I know you said you had some pictures, and we didn't want to make it appear so devastating by actually, you know, providing some of those photos. I know you do have them, but our principals are here, and they could very well, you know, attest to the fact that they have lost, you know, doors, windows, air conditioning above their roofs, and it's a dire situation for us. So, and I'm going to go ahead and have Joe talk about the other areas, and then I'd like to close it by making some suggestions to the legislature to help us. Thank you.
Sorry. School readiness, and so at this point we are focusing on the opening of the school year, which is scheduled for August 9th. However, we know that June 30th is when our sanitary permits expire. So we have our SOP 1200-08. We have a school readiness report that administrators submit on a weekly basis. It covers areas such as deep cleaning, teacher vacancies, master scheduling, student scheduling, wow, I'm sorry, as well as supplies and materials needed, facilities and maintenance, what is needed to repair their schools, as well as parent and teacher, as well as student orientation. And so this information is provided to me on a weekly basis so that we are able to keep track on the status of their opening of the school year. And so I can provide you a copy if you'd like.
Please do. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you. So to round out our major initiatives, these are all things that we're really trying to keep moving, even though we're in the middle of disaster recovery. This includes our CIP and ARP plans and activities. And again, we have our CIP team here. They are really working hard to make sure that all the damage assessments and the work that needs to be done is kind of aligned to the work that's already been planned. We've already been informed by the AG's office and our legal counsel that some of the specifics, the specifications are going to need to be adjusted because if they know that, for example, canopies or roofing, there's going to be additional work that needs to be done, we're going to have to update the bid packages. So we're going to be working with them diligently on that. We also have our GDOE 5-year strategic plan. This is a major component when it comes to the superintendent's evaluation. So we know that when he comes, he's going to be very interested in looking at what our progress is, as well as the implementation plans for the next few years. And then in November, we have scheduled WASP district level accreditation. So as you know, the schools all get accredited separately. Well, in 2015, we started the process with the Western Association of Schools and Colleges to accredit the entire district. So we're up for accreditation in November. So those teams continue to write the drafts, and we're prepared to submit our final report sometime in October. It has to be submitted a month before the team comes to the island. Thanks, Dr.
Okay, and just to add on the CIP and ARPs and whatever ESF monies that we have, I want you to know that the disaster recovery unit out of the Department of Education, Christina Carroll had connected with me. They do have this project SERVE, and because of the declaration from the president that they will be able to assist us as well in not so much like the physical part of our facility, but more to the curriculum side to help get our children back into schools again. So we're having a conference call with her this Friday morning, and we would know more how they'll be able to assist us. We're also, as Joe had mentioned, we do have another meeting as well tomorrow morning with US Ed, and that's more specific to ARP, okay? What I'd like to, if I may, in closing, is to let you know requests in terms of what it is that I'm asking you to help the department. We have approximately 289 teacher vacancies. Those numbers will come down when we hire, of course, limited term teachers, and when we bring back our retired teachers, and then that will give us then the actual number of teachers who don't fall in that category. There are, however, I've been hearing this, I'm sure you have, is families, teachers are already moving off island. So that is going to exacerbate, of course, our case in terms of recruiting more teachers. I'm requesting for the following, if I may. And I know that I'm requesting that you introduce an omnibus bill, primarily and very specific to DOE. And I do understand the issue of germaneness, but because this is all for DOE to get us and that recovery movement, moving forward, to get our schools open and to bring some of these mandates that is restrictive or would hamper or tie our hands. I'd like for you to consider a bill that we had introduced when I was in the legislature, Public Law 31-40. What that is that we had used monies that we had received from ARA under President Obama. And because of the expiration date for the ARA monies, and we have the same expiration date for ARP with personnel costs. Because as you know, our top priority will always be to pay for our personnel. What I would like to do is to do that switch, but I want it in a lockbox. That's why it has to be introduced by legislation. So when we get our monies for payroll, what we'll do is that money will be used for ARP for all of our CIP projects. Then the monies from ARP will then pay for the salaries of our staff. That's the gist of the bill. The second bill that I'm looking at as well, and as you know, is Public Law 37-4. And our request is to, if possible, put it in abeyance for this school year, to not have it go into effect this school year, but rather for the next school year, so school year 24-25. The third bill is the certification of our teachers, and that's Public Law 32-220. I've had my teachers, I do have a team of principals actually work as a task force looking at this and finding other options for us to consider rather than just a bachelor's degree and the passing of the praxis, to consider other options as well. and we've done some research on how other states have done this. I've already communicated with Region 18 and Region 19, who I'm a member of, which is a comprehensive education program, and they provide data, they provide, any academic support, and so I'm meeting with them this June. There are other options, such as what we call professional learning activities. You know how that is. If you bring somebody from another trade into the school system, is that then their portfolio, like a portfolio, can be considered as, evidence of the work that they have done. So it's not so, and giving these different types of requirements, certain number of points that they're going to need to be able then for us to be able to hire them. We're not bypassing, of course, the praxis part of it, because currently under CG, we do pay for them to be able to take those remedial courses at the university, and we do pay them if they pass the praxis, reimburse them for taking the test. So we're not saying we're throwing that out the window. I'm just saying that we want to be able then, aside from what is required, is to actually put in other requirements as well, that options for us to look at, alternatives to look at for our teachers. So those are the three bills and the bill numbers that I've given you, that if you could review them, I'll be willing to sit with you sooner rather than later, because as you know, my last day is June 30th. Thank you very much, Senators. 30. And lastly, my principals are back here, our administrators. And if you have any specific, question for them, you can name the school, and I've already informed them that, if they're willing to come up, should you want to bring them up. Otherwise, thank you so much for, this roundtable meeting.
Thank you very much, Acting Superintendent, and thank you to your management team for the very informative reports. We definitely appreciate your time here. And at this time, I'd like to pass over to my colleagues for any questions, comments, or concerns that they may have. And I'll go ahead and start with my Vice Chair, Senator Chris Duenas. Senator.
Mr. Chairman, and to the management team that's here, thank you for a very comprehensive look into what's going on. To each and every one of the principals and administrators, everyone's here, I want to really express a sincere and undangklong on the behalf of the people of Guam. I was at the Tier 3 shelter being managed by Red Cross, the Pac Express, and I wanted to relay this, and I'm glad we had a public opportunity to do this. Ms. Kyle Parkinson, who's running that shelter, has nothing but great words to say for each and every one of the individuals at the Department of Education that have provided for the shelters. They were extremely impressed. They know there's a lot of challenges, but she said, please convey that to the Department of Education and everyone who has done excellent work in terms of sheltering and continuing, and now the transition to the Tier 3 shelters. My team and others are working to make sure we help support them, the Red Cross and FEMA in that too. I don't have a lot of questions, Madam Speaker. I think it's going to be important for us to go over the request of the legislation that you've brought forward. I think it's something that needs to be strongly considered, and we'll vet that as it goes forward. I think all of us have a lot of work to do going forward, but like I said, as far as the shelters and the transitions, it looks like it's really moving along at a great pace. And so I'm just going to leave everybody to their work, and thank you for everything that you've done. And just maybe one question, Madam Chair, or Madam Speaker, as we consider the issue with regard to the teacher situation. You said there's examples of this, and I know that we have the mentor program, and Joe, we did graduates and the like with regard to that. Maybe that supervisory level of if you're taking individuals and taking career credits from other professions and giving temporary certification of the like, maybe that program will mesh well with that.
No, absolutely. And Joe and I had that conversation as well. And hence, of course, the reason for bringing in these mentors, because these are teachers or coaches who have to be able to work with first-year teachers, those, yes, who didn't pass the praxis, our limited-term teachers, absolutely. We're not, if there's anything that I don't want is any new teacher going in without having the support of either a master teacher or the school administrators. I know what that is like.
Yeah, just such an effective program, and even those who just came along from being teachers' aides and the like, all the way fully up. I mean, it just seems like it works. So it looks like that supervision, if it's built in, can really give that quality classroom, teaching and learning, but taking the experience and the credits from others. I just wanted to get that one in because I know Joe, like I said, has really been a champion of that program. We had a recent graduation, so I know you all got a lot of work to do, so I don't have a lot of questions. I just want to thank you once again for everything that you're doing, and anything that we can do, continue to shoot our way. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Vice Speaker Teresa Lai.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you to all of you who are here, who have been working in schools, preparing them even before the storm to close out, and for next year to open again, making sure, and then with this storm, for all of the work that you have done. You're so tough and very, we really owe you everything for all that work that you've done and continue to do through this day, continuing as shelters. Very difficult, very, very difficult. So, Sizus Masi. Just a couple very short questions. When we moved to Tier 3 shelters, you said Astumbo and Maria Ujo will close. What about Weddingale? It will remain open?
It's on. Yes, so Weddingale will still remain open until we find a second Tier 3 facility.
Okay.
We have currently just have one Tier 3 facility. They're looking at a facility at least 20,000 square feet. And so we're looking at all our resources to find out if there are any warehouses available. If you guys know of anyone, we've tapped into our realtors, the business community in general, to find out if there's facilities that we can use for our Tier 3.
Is that your job to find that Tier 3 shelter, or is that
No.
like the recovery office's job?
Well, there should be a recovery office, but there isn't a recovery office. So we're assisting American Red Cross in
Red Cross.
Yeah,
I
American
understand
Red
they've
Cross
taken
and
over this
assisting.
responsibility to help you, and I'm just
Yeah,
looking
so
for.
it's really the American Red Cross that's
Yes.
responsible for the Tier 3. However, we want to be able to move out of the Tier 1 and Tier 2
Yes, of course. So
business
you're helping-
as soon as possible.
I get it.
So in order to do that, we are helping them look for places for Weddingale Elementary.
All right, thank you. Thank you again. And so the August 9 opening is very ambitious in the current state. We're not even sure about other government agencies getting back to regular operations by that time, let alone an entire school system. So thank you for your dedication to that effort. Of course, we want our kids to be educated, so we're going to try our best to support you in any way. Thank you for the recommendations, Madam Speaker. We will definitely look at these. If we can get answers from the federal DOE and your counterparts, if they approve, then we'll definitely try to accommodate those recommendations. Thank you for opening the graduations to face-to-face and in real graduations. We've heard a lot of concerns about that, and thank you. I know that's a lot of extra work in the middle of recovery, but Situs Masi. Thank you for that. Can you just clarify, you're running a generator for your main systems, but if island power is restored to the Tizen area, you're going to be okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. Pardon?
We have no water, though.
Yes, we have water at Central as well.
All right. Is there a
So-
major issue or just regular GWA and GPA issues? Okay,
Yeah.
so we're just waiting. All right, we'll pray for that. Okay, I know they're working hard, so we're all praying for Manila, Tizen area, and Dedido to all of these areas to get water and power. Okay. No further questions. Just thank you again for all your work. And I know these are challenging times, so thank you for remaining really steadfast and diligent and resilient. Situs Masi.
Thank you, Speaker Terlahi. Senator Joanne Brown.
Thank you very much. Good morning to all of you. I know it's a challenging time to be here, of all places. When I was not in the legislature, I never cared to visit, so to be honest. And I don't watch session whenever I don't have to, if I'm not sitting in the legislature. You know, I know we were challenged with DOE prior. Our meeting prior certainly had a lot to do with the fiscal infrastructure of a number of our schools and the challenges to address that and the timelines that, you know, we have public expectations. So I know this has probably quadrupled all of your work efforts to try to address that, and at the same time, now summer's starting, but you know, before we know it, the school will start again. So how are you going to be able to juggle that, do you think, to enable to recognizing we had challenges with contractors prior to the typhoon, and then whatever the additional damage or repairs that need to be done to make sure that the classrooms are safe and clean for your students and for your teachers and your other employees in your school system? And have you already prioritized what's the most critical that was damaged during the storm, and what can be done to address that in the very, very short timeline left before school opens again?
I thank you for that question. Prior to the typhoon, we have already started to break up our schools into 4 regions and had IFBs written, the scope of work written. 2 of them had gone through the Attorney General's office as well, because we're working very closely with a specific attorney assigned to us to do just that for CIP. We're taking advantage also of the fact that of the governor's emergency declaration, so that then we can move our purchase orders of up to $250,000. So we're doing that as well. We're taking advantage of that. And like, you know, Joe had mentioned earlier, a lot of the work to be done are really part already of the ARP monies that have been identified to address them. The last thing is that I've reached out to the governor as well for her to get in touch with, get another declaration or a waiver from the president to allow for H2 laborers to come out to the community. A contractor had reached out to me saying that he has 500 H2 workers, and that if they're not being used in the community, he has to send all of them back to the Philippines. So I called the governor's office asking if that could be part of her request for that waiver. And I'm hoping that it is, because then now more workers will be available then to help us as well.
Well, I certainly hope that would help facilitate. I mean, we need those H2 workers, even in spite of we didn't have the typhoon. You mentioned your staff here with regards to the shelters and the transition of our residents that are in the shelters, transitioning them out to another location. What is your desired timeline so that the facilities can be once again made available, so that, you know, addressing recovery efforts and getting things geared up for the new school year?
Well, the timeline appears that it might be today that the shelteries from Estumbo and Maria Ujoa will be moving to their Tier 3 facility. And so I would know more later this morning whether that's going to happen. However, pre-registration has already happened is currently happening at the school sites.
And how, I mean, out of your schools, percentage-wise, how many of them don't have power or water at this point? Just a round figure. I know you're not sitting there calculating every detail, but just overall percentage of your schools that have power and water. Are they all out pretty much?
Yeah.
I think it's not today, but I think that's something certainly with the utilities, because I'm surprised. I think we had an expectation, especially with the water system. This is kind of unexpected, but there's another time and place to discuss that, but it's certainly adversely impacted a lot of our ability to address, particularly water, not having water to address cleaning. But I'm sure as we go along, I'm sure our chairman will update us with additional engagement with you as we're preparing for the new school year, and obviously getting status on your recovery. And I appreciate your time, all of you. I know you're hearing us all thank you. I know you're doing the very best you can with the challenges that are before you. But ultimately, I know we want to have a safe Cleveland environment for our students to get back to school. And appreciate also the graduation. We kind of forget at our age how important those major milestones are in life. And I know with the pandemic, that really changed the dynamics, and yet you still accommodated it. But certainly, I'm sure for our students to be there with their classmates, some for the very last time probably, to be able to celebrate the completion of their school year is something they're looking forward to. So I'm glad you're able to make accommodations to address that. Certainly we look forward to next meeting. It's not a time to argue, it's a time to pull together so that we can get back on track. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator Brown. Speaker Terlai, you had additional questions?
Yeah, when do you expect the solicitations for bids to go out for those CIP projects, for the ARP CIPs that you were working on?
I'm sorry. Yes, Senator. Phil Tovis, Facilities Manager. One went out. We focused on Southern because contractors don't typically want to take jobs all the way down there. So that one went out. We were going to space them a week at a time, but then the typhoon happened. And so that's kind of, we got to pick up now and start moving forward with that plan.
So you're going to amend the others, Northern and Central, and then send those out
Yes.
as well? You're prepared. Okay. And what if we waived that law, the 37-4? You said hold in abeyance for one more year. Does that mean we're going to open schools that are not suitable? What would happen? What do you expect?
No, we're not saying that we're going to open schools that are not suitable. We are definitely, how should I say this? We're depending, of course, and we were assured that there will be extra manpower to help us secure, like, for example, some of the doors and the windows to help us with the debris. So we're going to do everything, and our people have been doing that right now. I went out and visited several schools, and I'm seeing that. So we know that's not a standard that we want. I hate to make light of these things, but if you look at the shelters that we have, we had down to 3, we had no water and no power. The generators weren't working. And definitely, that's a horrible situation, and we were inspected, but yet we were not closed. So, I mean, if that can be accepted, the current condition today, then I'm not saying we're going to have that same condition, because I know our people, the administrators and the staff of the school, that they would do everything that they can to get the schools ready. And we're not going to, it won't be unsanitary. We won't. If we need to move them to other classrooms that has been damaged and they would have to share, then we'll do that.
I just know that I appreciate that, and I know that one of the motivations behind that, those deadlines being placed and enforcing, was to ensure that the rest of the government would come to the assistance of DOE. That was really the goal, to get the entire government of Guam to focus on DOE and make it, as suitable as we can make it for the students at the beginning of the school year. So I'm hoping that we're still going to see a lot of that. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I did, if I could get facilities and maintenance, because, I'm going around kind of do my own assessment of the damages from Typhoon Mawar at the schools. You guys kept coming up in a positive way. I went up to UPI where they had the main office door blew in, and I mean the whole office the tiles blew all over the place. The ducts are all mansalapun, but they said that you guys came and secured that door. I think the day after the storm hit. I also heard up at Maria Ujoa, they had louver windows in the cafeteria blow in, led to flooding. You guys also secured that. So I know you've been going around and doing kind of your assessment. So if you could, and I don't necessarily need specifics, but just describe the type of damage that we're seeing at the different schools, and then maybe rate some of the worse off schools and the damage that they have versus some of the schools that did relatively better. Right. Thank you.
Sean Monforti, Food and Nutrition, and helping maintenance. So I do want to say hats off to the maintenance guys, because we've been working together since the beginning of the typhoon, throughout the typhoon. So we have been sending guys out in Corps when we weren't supposed to be going out, but we were looking at the safety of the shelteries too, right? So you were asking a couple of questions. One was some of the major issues that we've had during the typhoon, post-typhoon was, or during the typhoon was the blown-in doors. We had windows, roof damage. A lot of the roofs are leaking now. Anything possibly could go worse did. But the guys were on top of it. The principals, oh, geez, man, these guys were great. It's so hard because these guys have been working around the clock, right? I mean, but I would say besides the initial damages, now we're suffering from lack of materials, of course, right? We're suffering from mold, things that, you know, we were not looking at in the, you know. So we're looking at mold, we're looking at lack of water, lack of resources, lack of power, so we could use the blowers. And, you know, with the water shortage, we can't go out there and water blast. The scraping. So, you know, the principals, the school staff, along with facilities and maintenance, as a team, as DOE does come together all the time. The challenges are great, but they can pull through it. Everybody seems to be pretty positive still as of right now. The initial work is, you know, you're saying that maybe other GovGuam agencies can come out and help and adopt a school. Maybe that would be a great idea. Nobody's going to turn any help away at this time. The principals, the chainsaws, we don't have chainsaws, but we are using personal chainsaws. We're borrowing chainsaws from everybody else, giving ours out. The challenges are great, but I have a good outlook on this. So then there was, I think that's about it, right, with the 2 parts.
Right. So did you? Let me just give you my assessment of what I saw, and just going around to different schools. Some of the concerns I heard from various principals were doors. Right. So, for example, the doors are press board. When you get wet, they expand. You open a door, then all of a sudden you can't shut the door anymore, and then, you know, maybe staff spending the night at the school. I know there was a joke made at one of the northern schools. Don't open that door, because if you can't shut it, you're sleeping over and playing security guard. Right. And I mean. But that's something I know is going to be addressed district-wide, because we are going to be replacing all of the doors across the district with the metal doors, right? So, and then other damage I saw was tin, places where there were walkways with tin roofing, or, you know, extensions on different buildings. The tin was, you know, one of the first things to go. But for example, up at DL Perez, right, they were, and I know we're doing these walkway reconstructions. I mean, in some ways, not to make light of it, but, you know, now they don't have to break down the walkway because it blew halfway across the campus, right? I know Phil said the same thing. He's got a good sense of humor. And a lot of trees, big trees, you know. This is the green waste from Typhoon Mawar is massive. And I want to say, I think that and we heard estimates from the Committee of the Whole when we were in there last week that somewhere that 75 to 80% of all the debris is going to be green waste. But you know what I'm really looking at is structural damage outside of you know, situations we had at the George Washington High School gym and other structural issues. Were there, Simon Sanchez, were there any, was there damage that was severe structurally wise that compromised the structure, other than, and I don't want to call any of the damage cosmetic, but, you know, tin blows across the yard, that's one thing. But, you know, if you have severe concrete damage that is going to compromise the integrity of any of the structures, Mr. Phil?
No, to my knowledge, there's no structural damage to the main structure of the building. You have the walkway canopies that were on their way out anyway, so those took off. Structure-wise, besides the GW that's already known, and possibly Simon Sanchez, there's no additional structural damage.
I did see someone in the back disagreeing. Did you want to come up, ma'am?
Okay.
Well, yes.
Can you come up, please, ma'am? And we actually have the principal for FB, Leon Guerrero, right? That's great lady to talk to, as FB was one of the schools that was closed, and they're now doing double session. Ukuru, yes, ma'am? Please state your name for the record.
Melissa Moffness, principal for FB Middle School. You know, in terms of structural damage, right, FB was moved because of structural damage. Because of the additional typhoon damages that were done, there are structural damages. Pieces of our cement have fallen down, and that has been something that, you know, we've had an issue with. I think our biggest issue, and I'm just going to say that, is the fact that the procurement issue is our biggest issue. And the bottom line is we need the money to repair the schools. So we can talk about a lot of the things that we need to do, but the bottom line is that we need to fix the schools, and money is the biggest thing. If we have it, right? And I know procurement, and we've been asking many times, and procurement just seems to be our biggest issue. And when Dr. Wanpat mentioned at our principals meeting that there was a bill that she initiated, if I'm correct, that helped with the ARRA funding, why can't we do that now? You know, procurement takes a long time, even just to order the minimal basic supplies. And truly, if you guys come out to the school, you'll see that we have a lot of things that need to be done, and we need help. Our people are doing everything that they can to clean with our own personal items. Principals are taking money out of, the staff is taking money out of their pockets to bring their own personal stuff. You know, we had to do shelter duty and to take in people unexpectedly, right? I mean, the bottom line is everybody just needs help. And if education is going to be the top priority every time somebody has a platform, I really hope that this is the time that everybody comes together and puts education first, because the kids are suffering, right? And there's, even if we went online, even if we tried to fix the schools, there's still the potential of mold. Buildings are still, we have ceiling tiles that are down, and flooding. And these are issues that have been around for the longest time. And so I'm hoping that now that we have federal money to use, that we use it for what it's intended to be. And, you know, I just hope, I'm going to be real honest, we just need to get around that procurement issue or do something so that we can get that money. We can talk about it all day, but the timeline is running out. So I do apologize if it's a major issue.
No need to apologize, ma'am. Yeah. I just want to ask, though, because I know when FB was closed down and they went to the double session at Ukadu, the superintendent at that time, and I believe it was Francis Santos, had said that they were looking at 6 months.
Correct.
Yeah, so.
And we are still at Ukadu.
Yeah.
And I believe the...
What's the status on the bid or the...
Yeah, that was supposed to go out, I believe, right before the typhoon, if I'm not correct, right?
So that hasn't not
and
gone
then
out.
that had not, but we've been out for the longest time. And so, again, if we're looking at fixing schools, I mean, not to say that FB is just the priority. I'm just saying we're one of the schools that are out. And if everybody is going to have their restrooms and everything, all of us had the intention of putting all that in as to what we need. It's been how long since we've put those reports in? And, you know, we can, like I said, I'm going to be honest, we can sit here and we can keep talking about what are your issues and what are everything, but the bottom line is we need your help in funding us or giving us or working around that area, because that just kind of takes the longest time.
Ma'am, I totally agree, and I think that's why we're at this juncture, and that was part of the inspiration for what eventually became Public Law 37-4, is that we have this avalanche of federal funds. We have the money to address these longstanding issues in our schools, and and I'll just say this runaround with FB Leon Guerrero. You know, my son goes to school there, right?
Yes.
We hear 6 months, and then, now it's going to be another 6. The bid's not even out yet. This is exactly why I introduced this bill that eventually became a public law, is because we hear it all the time. We hear about the kids, you know, being the priority. We hear about the schools being the priority. But yet we're here today having this conversation. And so while I know that there's an ask being made to introduce something to suspend the Public Law 37-4, you know, I'm not really sold on it just yet because of how much sliding has been done in the past with the Guam. You know, with all due respect, not under Superintendent Judy Wampat necessarily, but I mean the track record is there. And you know, it sounds like a lot of the issues, I mean, if we didn't see significant structural damage from Typhoon Mawar, and what we're seeing is a lot of green debris, a lot of tin, a lot of projects that were already going to be addressed to come into compliance with Public Law 37-4, then, you know, I'm not sure if we're ready to just tear that public law up, because to me, that's a big motivation to keep moving and to keep, you know, fixing the state of our schools. And you know, I talked to administrators and going around the schools, and, you know, one of the administrators told me, he said, don't forget why you introduced that bill, and don't be so quick to tear it up. Because I will say that before the typhoon even hit, I was already being approached by GDOE management to put a pause on this bill, or to introduce a repeal of it. And, you know, I'll just say that we have to put in that honest effort before we throw in the towel. And that's really what I want to see. And I'm not saying, we all know everybody is working hard. We all know the teachers, school aides, clerk typists, principals, assistant principals. We all know you guys spend out of pocket, not because you have to, but because you love our schools and you love our kids, and you don't even think twice about spending your own money. And so I know that that's the conversation that we're having this morning, but I guess I just would like to hear from Mr. Phil. What exactly is the status
Well, I mean,
on FB?
Don't get me wrong. I mean, we are doing everything that we can, even on the management side. It's just that we have our issues, and roof leaks are one of the major things. If that is fixed the way it should be, other things will come into place. You won't have to worry about the leaks on the floors, you know, tiles popping up. That's just, the roof leaks is the major one.
Top down, right?
Correct. And, you know, I know it's taken a long time, but all the schools are in dire need. And this is not something that happened overnight.
Exactly.
This has not happened because the
And,
typhoon
and I'll
came.
also say this is not something that happened, you know, as a direct result of Typhoon
No,
Mawar.
it didn't.
So Phil, if you could just give us a status on FB Leon Guerrero, please.
FB is ready to be released, published for IFB, but again, because of the storm, things got paused. FB, there's no structural damage. There may be superficial damage from the spalls, but otherwise, it's structurally sound. The engineering report, the structural engineer's report states that. So if there's any additional damage to FB, it would be typical typhoon-related damage as excess water blowing and maybe a little window here and there, but nothing additional structurally. So what we've done with FB was we've pulled it out separately and tried to address everything we're doing with the other schools, but we wanted to focus on that separately and address the additional works, as in tiles, that have been popping up for many years of leaks and stuff. So once we get that out, we're going to go through the procurement process. Hopefully we get bidders. That should get rolling.
It's just frustrating, Phil, because FB was the first school down, right? I mean, this is the way I look at it, it was the first one down. My son goes there. They've been going over to Ukadu, getting off school at 6 p.m. and just remembering what former Superintendent Santos had said was that we were looking at not 6 months to put it out to bid, but 6 months to completion of the repairs at the school. So when you talk about procurement being the problem, Mr. Phil, how was procurement and that process specifically the problem for FP Leon Guerrero?
Well, the process itself is pretty lengthy. You gotta have exact scopes of work, that's been done, put out before you're able to publish. An example would be the Simon Sanchez bid that Superintendent Fernandez, former Superintendent Fernandez, described. Was the first one was you didn't have scopes of work. All they did was ask contractors to give you their own rendition of what you want. Now you got somebody that's going to give you a castle, somebody that's going to give you bare minimum. So instead of doing that, we had standards built so that they're all bidding and targeting the same, focusing on the same target, finished product. So that had to be determined and done properly. So most of the time, roofs, walkway canopies, those are all standard that applies to all the schools. We pull those out, and then we address the additional stuff that's specific to FBLG. That took some time.
Was there a delay then? Because
No.
just again, basing our estimates on what the former superintendent had said, it appears
Yes.
that it didn't come to fruition. Well, it didn't.
So we were doing everything, what we call refurbishment, that applies to all the schools. But when that earthquake happened and the news came out on that, we went out to revisit that. Then we found that, hey, this is a little bit more than the other schools. And it's because of the design of that building. They're tilt-up, they're meant to flex, and your rubberized seals are what come apart when they flex. And then that allows water to seep in. With water, then you have deterioration, further deterioration downstream, tiles, electrical panels, that kind of stuff.
Thank you. Ma'am, did you have anything further to add? Thank you for speaking out, and we definitely take everything that you said into consideration. As you know, FB is very close to my heart, and I've been wondering. You know, we had this timeline set by the former superintendent, and it looks like that we haven't even begun to chip away at that timeline. But I did want to recognize the presence of Senator Roy Kanata, and since he's here, and also since we're at this roundtable, I did want to ask specifically about Simon Sanchez.
Yes.
Go ahead, Soup.
Thank you. Just to let you know that, funding is not an issue here. This FB is actually part of AIP. Oh, sorry. No. Okay, I'm sorry. Now you can hear me. The funding is not an issue, specifically to FB and really all our 35 schools. We're using ARP monies. What Phil was saying, that the ARP monies that we're going to be using for all the 35 schools are uniform in the sense of what we're doing: roofing, spalling, restrooms, doors, electrical. Okay, guess I forgot something. FB, because it stands alone, having all the same issues plus more, it was separated out, just like what we did with GW Gym. Everybody would tell you, yes, and Ms. Muffness is correct. Procurement really is a major issue. We're taking advantage, yes, of the governor's declaration, but that only takes us up to $250,000. So that's the front end. Then, of course, when you consider the middle part of it, it's procurement. So we go at the declaration, the procurement, and then what she was talking about was what you did, which is the back end of any procurement, so that in case we're going to get protested, the projects will not stop. It will continue. But we have to figure out a way, you have to figure out a way, really, as senators, because it is law. And I understand, you don't want abuse, and we don't have everyone run amok, you see, when you're going to do procurement. But if it can be, again, because of the criticalness of the situation we're in, that there has to be an expedited process, in the sense that it will not take us long. We tried to do that, and I think we've been successful by doing it, because we made an agreement with the AG, and we have a specific Assistant Attorney General now who works very closely with our legal counsel. So once we do the scope of work, once the procurement office starts the process to put the IFB together, our legal counsel reviews it, they send it to the AG. If he has any question, it goes back again. So that process has been shortened for us. But there are still other problems, of course, in terms of dates now. When we would put it out for bid, then they submit their proposal. Then we evaluate their proposal, and then we award. All those they take months, literally. And we're following everything. Our legal counsel is making sure, we are making sure, and I say this primarily with emphasis, because we're talking about federal dollars. We're talking about us being under, the probationary period to get out of high risk. So we're not going to do anything to jeopardize, you know, what we're trying to do with procurement to go out there and repair our schools. It is frustrating. I hear from the principals that they are frustrated. I'm frustrated as well. We all are. But we are bound by the law.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, we'll look at something on the front end, and I think that we had introduced a measure that just maybe hasn't gone to the floor yet. But on the status of George Washington High School, Jim, has that gone out?
Yes, it has gone out.
Okay. And then Simon Sanchez. So I've heard from staff and have seen the pictures. Can you maybe speak a little bit more? Because I think you might have skipped over it. Simon Sanchez, concerns about current conditions of the campus at Sanchez. Joe.
Yeah, I can't speak to specifics, but we know that we have 3 schools that we've added 2 more that are part of this agenda. As one is Simon Sanchez, not just the rebuild part, but we've heard that they've had substantial damage due to the storm. So not to be premature, but we are really concerned about whether or not that campus is going to be usable for the regular school year, which means, you know, I don't want to use the term double session or whatnot yet. Again, that's still premature. But we are seriously concerned about whether or not the school is going to be available for the fall.
And so that being said, when you, if you went up to Sanchez and you got a look at the extent of the damage, and because I mean, part of why schools sustained damage was because they weren't in compliance with health and safety and structural guidelines, right? So what was your read on Sanchez, and would any amount of work, even if we got the whole government of Guam in there to attack Sanchez, that campus specifically, would any amount of work bring that campus to compliance so that it could open on time this school year?
Okay, so Sean actually will go ahead and talk about specifics.
Okay, so we have been up to Sanchez. There's an extensive amount of work to be done. Is it beyond facilities and maintenance? Yeah. That Mrs. Masanayan's up there too. She's on the table now. She is probably the best one. I mean, it's very, her staff though, I do have to commend them. While we were there, they were carrying, wiping stuff that they're doing a good job, but we're trying to give them the support they need to.
Thank you, Sean. Ms. Masanayan, good morning.
Good morning. Carla Mesnayan, proud principal of Simon Sanchez High School. Thank you for my colleagues. I've been asking them if they can put me on a priority if we ask for help, because we did sustain a lot of damage. Primarily our main campus, which has about 50 plus classrooms. First of all, it starts off at the roof. So we have 18 AC, about 25 to 30 ton AC units on the roof. About 15 of them have been destroyed. 2, we don't know, they look okay, but we don't know without any power. And 1 of them sustained duct damage. So over the typhoon, we had about a foot of water on the roof, which was slowly leaking into the 2nd floor and down into the 1st floor. So you can already anticipate all the ducts were wet, ceiling tiles were falling, all the hallways were wet and flooded. In addition to that, we had 1 room on the 2nd floor, room 205, which was destroyed. It actually blew in and it wet the surrounding classrooms, the walls on the surrounding classrooms. Our 2nd floor hallways were also flooded. We tried to clear up some of the ceiling tiles, but it still continues to drip. So I'm guessing that there are water pooling in the ducts currently. Many of the ceiling tiles fell. The other area that was also severely damaged is our 300 classrooms. Those are all temporary classrooms, so they're a little lower than the main campus. So during the storm, it probably flooded. It went into the classrooms. A lot of the roofs were leaking. The drop ceilings are wet. Almost all of the classrooms right now have severe mold. So what we've been doing is we've just really been taking out a lot of the expensive stuff, which is the equipment, laptops, Promethean boards, and moving them over to the science building, which is the area that's with minimal damages. We just had a little flooding and we got that mopped up. But again, without the power to see actually the extensive, how much more damage we have in the main building, that's just the initial, visual inspection that Mr. Finonia and I had done. and that's it. A lot, but that's it.
Yeah, it's quite a bit.
Yeah, so I don't even recommend my staff going in anymore, so they'll be working on just clearing up stuff outside the building. Teachers have been coming in to pull out personal equipment to take home, and then just storing whatever we could in the 400 classrooms.
Could I ask your opinion on a double session and whether or not do you think that that is going to be the way that we end up going at the start of the school year?
We're still exploring options, but right now, just listening to the community when we were talking about online, it's not something that they really want. My community really is not capable of being 100% or even 75% efficient with online. A lot of my families do not have the resources for that. So face-to-face is something we're going to ask for.
Vice Chair Duenas?
I'm sorry, but I think we've ventured into an area where questions are popping up. Madam Acting Superintendent, what is the current population at Teads High? $980. So is that full then? How many buildings do you have available? Yeah, we might have to take a look at
Can
this.
we ask her to come to the table? Are you the principal, ma'am? Okay, just have a seat here.
And I asked this, and I hope I don't offend anybody, but it's just my memory that when that school was first, the inception was to have it as a rotating school for repairs of schools and others, and I think maybe a few sharks might swim. I just want to put it on the record. Can you please put on the record what you said? So as I recall, you had 980 students currently enrolled, Teads High?
Yes, we currently have 980 students. We started out Teads High School with 1,284, but the population has gone down. So there's enough room to hold about 1,300 students.
I'm just going to float it here. I think you might want to put that on the...
However, there are major concerns with mold in the building as well because there's many roof leaks. All buildings have roof leaks.
Okay. I just...
Senator, you're correct, and you're really in the right track. And I was in the legislature when we secured a Teads High School for JFK. And JFK at the time had an enrollment of 2,300. Now, granted, yes, we're seeing a population drop from 35 to 28 to now 25,000 students. So we do understand that. And I give credit to a lot of our principals who are working very closely with the deputies, that when we look at our schools and if there is, after they do the leveling, then they're able to free up some teaching positions. By doing so, yes, we're also able to free up some classrooms. So, and if push comes to shove, I know that the principals will definitely come together in terms of like what you're saying, the possibility of other alternatives, whether it's to do a double session or do it within the school. There are many options, because we talked about this, as a matter of fact, already. So we do have those kind of discussion and plans, because we were looking at Public Law 37-4, that if we're not able then to have all of our schools inspected until November, what are we going to do meantime? So yes, we're kind of prepared for this, and we bring the principals in to have that conversation.
Teads is still under leaseback, right?
Yes, it is.
And the reason why I bring that up is because let's put it on the table now with our good friend from FB. Leaseback doesn't have the procurement problems that the government has, because they're under that term, whereas if you put other responsibilities on them, they can activate their procurement within their contract to be able to do things and not get caught up in the crossfire of what the procurement issues are outside. So just wanted to float it. I mean, like I said, I don't want to micromanage, but that has to be on the table, because I know that was the intention, and if we're under that contract, to me, it's going to be a lot easier to deal with mold and securing, as I'm hearing from Principal Masnayan, if those ducts are intruded to the tune of 90% of their air conditioning system,
Yes.
that just doesn't sound
So,
to me like a
yes,
6-week
and,
fix.
and because of that, that was exactly one of the first two things that we are moving forward with. One definitely is mold. So we met with the Cortec management the other day to address that issue. Unfortunately, based on the contract, is the lease contract, is that it's only for structural damage, concrete damage. Because we tried to, the water that seeps in between the walls that are wet, and then mold would grow. So that's not their responsibility. And if it is going to be, then naturally they informed us that that would be something that the legislature would have to address, because they will charge the government for it.
Yeah,
Now,
yeah.
we tried that as well in terms of looking at, let's say we want to get this work done. They are asking for us to show the PO in order for them to do the work, and then the PO then would go through the process to be able to pay them. So we did, and we're having legal counsel look at, the contract as well, and that would be the same for all of our lease schools.
Yeah, I just think a contract amendment at this point is going to be a lot faster than straight out procurement.
But
Just wanted
then,
to put on the table.
but because the government pays for this, that's one of your debt obligation, then that means there would be an increase to that obligation for you to consider.
Yeah, and we could also float whether or not FEMA could, come into play here,
Yeah.
because these are storm-related damages
So-
that could be reimbursable.
You're right. So-
I just think we need to put everything on
So
the table.
we know that because of all these problems, mold is a major issue for us, for the health and safety of our employees. The second issue that's part of our CIP was electrical, that we were going to do with all of our 35 schools to upgrade them. Now the problem has been exacerbated by the storm, and had suggested to us that we try to bring back again the electrical company that has done the scope of work, because they know our schools, they know our power system at the schools, because we were literally told that we really shouldn't be, when the power gets turned on, is to attempt, to go into any area where our electrical wires have been, exposed and have retained a lot of water. So those are two. I mean, there are many others, but those are two really big issues that involves the health and safety of our people.
Yeah, just in closing on this one, I just, Ms. Manayan, I think the problem that's always been discussed as, perennial for Sanchez is you don't have an option to open windows and do things like that. I mean, in terms of if you have that kind of extensive damage on your air conditioning system to that extent, I mean, how many rooms would you say that you would have if that couldn't be mitigated in terms of, even if you thought about double session?
Well, the main building is about 56. That's only classrooms. And then I have another 12 in the science and another 21 in the 300s, which we might not be able to use either.
So you could be as far down as 50%.
More than, because we have 86 classrooms, physical classrooms, and my teachers share classrooms.
Yeah, I think your report is going to be absolutely critical. I mean, I just hate to put you and the community through that. Having done a lot of construction work myself, having, that kind of damage to duct work and for circulation, and having no windows in that school to be able to open, that sounds very serious. So I think, Madam Superintendent, we're going to have to really consider that. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice. Sue, before I go to Senator Kanata, I wanted to ask just generally the lease schools, did they fare any better or any worse than the older facilities?
The same. They sustain the same damage, but in specific cases where we found out that our lease schools placed the AC unit above, that what we saw, like for example in Atacao, is that in 2 classrooms, that they were blown out and it became an open, space to fully saturate the classrooms. We lost everything. in those classrooms. And it's not just there. We went to TGen. We saw the same thing in their cafeteria and their offices. So that must have been a model that they used then for the Lee schools, is to have those air conditioners on the roof that were easily blown away. And it became jokingly that we have a skylight now in the classrooms because they are open and exposed.
Yeah, I don't know how many skylight jokes we heard since Typhoon Mawar, but Sean or Mr. Phil, just generally on the air conditions, because in going around I did see ACs hanging from the roof. Where are we, and is there any way that these are replaceable, insured, or just, if you could, just the percentage of ACs that you estimate were damaged district-wide?
I don't have those numbers. Sean's working with the PDAs.
Hi. Yeah, I don't have the exact numbers right now. We do know that there is a significant jump in the air conditions that have been taken out since the typhoon. So if we were looking, the numbers we were looking at before has greatly increased. I mean, the air conditions are in a, but we do have to look at the bright side though. A lot of the CIP and ARP projects are going to cover these things right now. So it's not as bleak as we're really, well, I'm trying not to look at it that bleak.
Right. Be positive.
Yeah.
And I mean, we had mold before Typhoon Mawar. I know that Southern High School had a lot of mold, right? And I see the difficulty in trying to assess damage at schools that don't have power. And now we're seeing the spread of mold, which you can't address until you have power, right? Because if you scrub that mold, as humid as our island is, without AC, I mean, a couple days, I don't care how much Lysol or Simple Green you're using, that mold's going to be back, right? Okay, Senator Kanata, good morning.
Did Senator Brown already go? Oh, no, I know my school's in shambles right now. I know the main building is it's a open concept. All of the walls in there are all gypsum board and temporary housing. So I know that all the schools have taken on significant damage. I want to thank all the administrators, all the principals, all the faculty, all the staff, all the volunteers, all the families that have stepped up to serve our community in whatever capacity possible. I know this is going to be an uphill battle for all of us. Procurement is the #1 uphill battle we've always heard numerous times. But I just want to thank you guys all for your hard work. I know this is going to be a long road ahead, and we just have to keep pushing forward, and we'll get through this one day at a time. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Kanata. If we could, before I go to Speaker Terlai, graduations. And so I did receive, and I'm sure you did too, a lot of concerns from graduates, potential graduates. I just first want to ask, you mentioned that teachers are still trying to close out the grades and everything for the year. Are there any graduating seniors whose potential trip to a college is being held hostage because we haven't finished processing, or were they given a priority status? No?
For high school graduate, the seniors' grades are due earlier than the juniors, sophomores, and freshmen. So no, it's not an issue.
And then the other concern I had, I'm pretty sure there's a quick answer to this, was students had expressed, and also parents, concerns with the University of Guam Fieldhouse, right? So I was a little confused because so no power and water, but they're having a comedy show this weekend. So is it, what's the real story there?
I don't know. I can't speak for the University of Guam, but my understanding is that there is no power or water for us to be able to use their facility.
Okay. And so now we're going to have a number of different high school graduations at John F. Kennedy
High School.
Correct. And so was the idea there, if you could just maybe explain that decision, because, for example, geckos maybe don't want to be graduating at the home of the Islanders, right? Or bulldogs don't want to go to JFK. And I understand the difficult circumstance, but did you look at other sites and determine if they would be able to be stood up, or if they were going to be feasible for graduation ceremonies?
The schools, as you know, it's just not feasible, and the most feasible place was John F. Kennedy High School, and I'd like to thank Principal Dr. Adamas for availing their campus. They have the infrastructure ready, they have the stage ready, so you know, it was just to piggyback on what is already there so that we don't have to reinvent the wheel and try and go to another facility and whatnot. And so the two facilities that we typically use is either John F. Kennedy has always used their campus, and our other schools have always used the University of Guam. Obviously, the Phoenix Center is too small for our graduates, so the best recourse, and the school administrators discussed it amongst themselves that they would want to go to John F. Kennedy High School. And we would think that, you know, though it's at JFK, we're one family, one Department of Education family, and that it doesn't matter where the place is at, it's just that they'll be able to graduate.
Right.
Yeah, Senator, I truly understand. Parents have contacted me, and students as well, that they have from a different school, a different mascot, everything, and now they're going to be at JFK. I got that yesterday, as a matter of fact, when I went out to one of the high schools. But the main reason why that JFK was able to move forward is because they do have water and power. And we asked all the school principals that if they do have water and power, then they can have it on, you know, their campus. Many of them were thinking of having it at their parking lot. We spoke to Southern High. Would they be willing to have it at their amphitheater? And I saw it yesterday, so we talked about it. But many of them, that's why at JFK, they're not having it in the courtyard with the exception of JFK. They're using actually the parking lot. So then that would kind of distinguish who they are, that it's not really, I mean, it's part of the facility, we know that, but only because they do have water and power.
Okay.
Should they get water and power, whether sooner, anytime this week, and they want to make the change, you know, we're very supportive of that.
Thank you very much for that, because I have, again, as you know, it's for us grown-ups, we're, you know, obviously very far removed from the old high school rivalries, small island, but we definitely have, maybe not necessarily rivalry, but school pride, and I think that's what was at stake. So I wanted to ask, with JFK, you said the reason why they were able to come back up online so quickly was because they have power and water. Do you anticipate similar quick turnarounds as we start to get utilities at all of our other schools?
We don't know. We
have
hope that
no idea really as to when they will. We were kind of hoping sooner, even at the time when our shelters were open, that would be a priority, but that hasn't happened. So some schools have water, but not all, and then some have, I don't know if you know, not all of our schools have power. 99% don't have power, I think.
Thank you. Senator Brown?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I did want to ask, because DOE, you do your own procurement.
Yes, we do.
And is there anything you've done to beef up your staffing capacity? I understand. I don't care for the 100-point checklist to procure in the government of Guam. But unfortunately, sometimes we don't always have the best of people managing things, and they can't help themselves but do things they shouldn't do.
You're right.
But what have you done to strengthen? Because I know this additional funding, and it's a very rare moment any administrator or head of Department of Education can say, oh, we have the money. Normally, you don't have the money.
You're right.
But what have you done to strengthen your procurement division so that you have the capability and capacity, you know, from the small projects to the big, larger procurements of construction that need to happen?
Well, we've done several things. One of the most recent things, of course, is that we actually had that job fair at our central office. And as a result of that, we had received applicants, and they're now rating those applicants. And just yesterday, spoke to our HR supervisor, who is going to be scheduling interviews, and these are for about 3 limited terms. One buyer 1, buyer 2, and 1 buyer supervisor. So yes, we are trying to expedite that process to interview and be able to hire on the spot. We also have some individuals who have been trained and have been assigned to procurement who are also assisting, but very specific to a federal funding. that they do that so that there won't be any cost sharing of that particular person. But yes, that is definitely a top priority. Facilities and maintenance is top priority. Auditors is another that we're moving forward to really hire individuals. Unfortunately, there aren't that many applying for the jobs that we have. And since I have the floor, so to speak, I like to put out a call that one of the easiest way to do this within the government, intergovernmental process, is that there could be this lateral transfer over to the department where we would not need to go through the process of announcing and interviewing if they want to do a lateral transfer.
One other thing, I mean, I understand if the possibility ultimately what decisions get made as we move forward into the new school year. I do want to state the concern with regards to busing. I had that concern before this typhoon came on the capabilities, and having been at DPW and the inner workings of how they operate, I am concerned that as you move forward with those decisions, we're going to have to come to the table with DPW and find out their capacity, because we can't get buses overnight either. And unfortunately, busing has not always been the priority. I mean, we focus a lot of resources on schools with those challenges, but you know, the number of bus drivers and the ability to properly deliver kids so that they're not getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning in the dark or coming home in the dark, to make sure that we can help facilitate. So as those decisions are being made, we definitely need to make sure that they have the capability to accommodate that, because we're not going to get any more buses in the near future to adjust to any schedules of doubling sessions.
Yes, that has been a problem for us, because I know they're servicing all of our schools.
Yes.
We really we've been trying, and we still are, accommodating the number of buses that they have and the runs that they need to do and the amount of time they need in between when they do the elementary run, high school run, and then the middle school. And we've been getting reports from our principals. One specifically is like Antolon Middle, where the kids, are picked up, quite late. And we had called to follow up on it, and it's the typical, problem would be not enough buses and or drivers. So we look forward to that. We've been our schools have really been very accommodating, in terms of setting our school days, start time and end times, to be able to make sure that buses are able then to transport our children.
Yes, and like I said, I'm sure as we're moving closer to that timeline, we look forward to that discussion as well, because again, I was concerned about capacity issues and capability issues prior to the storm, so it's just something we need to make sure is brought to the table as well. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Brown. Speaker Terlai?
Yeah, just real quick, I want to go back to the procurement. So all the schools, supposedly, we have money for all the schools to get repaired. Money's not the issue right now. Some of the principals are saying procurement's the issue, yet we're hearing that the solicitations are going out. But I just want to go back to this procurement timeline. If a solicitation goes out, I'm not sure, you control how many days you're going to allow for a response and an evaluation and an award, right? That's pretty much in your control, and we as a legislature have shortcutted any protests after the awards have been given so that those projects will proceed during this time while we're using ARP money. So if you put out, got your inspections, put out your specs, put out your solicitation within 30 days, ask for responses and bids within 30 days, and evaluated and made the awards, especially with the AG's help for the solicitation and the awards, within another 30 days, that's 90 days. So I know for schools, 90 days is a huge amount of time. It's not enough even for us to get anything done in the summer by August. So do you use a shorter time frame than what, this is just mine made up. Every agency controls these types of time frames. So, but for you have this protest shortening, right? Are we looking at 90 days for all your procurements, or are you looking at a shorter time frame? And what are you going to control there?
Well, when I came, Carmen is here, our procurement officer. I'll bring her up. But what I wanted to just share at the very beginning, knowing, of course, that we needed to get all of this done and to meet that expiration date, is that I actually had set up, in my wall, the time frame. I was working with 3 weeks rather than, but now we have resorted to a month. We were advised by, of course, the Attorney General, Assistant Attorney General that we're working with, that might give us, more time for other bidders to come in, and that the 3 weeks may not be sufficient. So that's what we're working with. That's why I gave you that scenario. We do the scope of work, we put out the bid, we have it go to our legal counsel and the assistant, attorney general, and then we announce it 1 month again, or even shorten time to evaluate, and then finally the last month would be to award. And so
You're also looking at 3 months.
You're right.
Like my scenario,
right.
my
Actually,
example.
yes.
Okay.
But
Carmen.
maybe Carmen might.
Actually, I
Sure.
think I should be able to answer this.
All right.
So because of the magnitude and the number of schools we're trying to accomplish at one time, it's probably best that we go with those longer numbers. That gives the bidders time to source material and not rely on what's available locally. And we get better pricing options when they're able to secure those. So if you shortcut and go 3 weeks, they'll source whatever's here. And because of the numbers that we're requiring for all 35 schools, you're going to run out of supply locally. So that may end up being a bigger problem in the long run. So it's best that we give them time to absorb the work. There's also site visits. We don't do mandatory site visits, but certain contractors would require that they go out. So we have them coordinate those things with the schools. There's time that needs to be given for them to digest the amount of work and work out scheduling and all that kind of stuff.
So what kind of time are you recommending then? Are you putting into your proposals?
Normal bid, 30 days.
30 days
Yeah,
is
30 to
enough?
45 days.
30
Yeah,
to
because
45.
we've broken it into regions. So we're as low as 5 schools per region, and as high as, I believe, 7 or 9 schools per region. So that's adequate time for them to.
All right, I appreciate that. And so I guess, Superintendent, what the question would be for us, for me, is that if there are schools, I feel like we should categorize the schools, the ones that need CIPs in order to open. The CIP projects to be done, we know they won't be done for 90 days because the solicitations are just gone out. So are there any CIP projects that will be done before the schools, open, and will those schools be ready? Or are those schools we already know in advance will not be ready? You don't have to answer today, but I'm just saying, I'm thinking in my mind we need to categorize these. These are schools that require CIP projects before they will be suitable for opening. We know that in advance, and we're going to have to work with a lot of, we'll see. Otherwise, the rest, we have to really expedite the other types of repair and all of that we can get done in how many days you have before August 9th? Yeah.
So what we did prior to the storm is that the big projects, the CIPs for the 35 schools, and then breaking them up to 4 regions. That was recommended that would be the best route, not just for us, but also with the Attorney General's office and ultimately the contractors. When we met with 40 of them, that was one of their suggestions, okay? So that's the big one for us. The other big ones are FB, the gym, and then all of the other contracts that we needed to get out separately. So all those were all the typhoon. However, because of the typhoon and what it has, caused, now there are other projects or POs that we're going to have to put out. Like, for example, the mold that we mentioned. We also, electrical. Because although it's part of the CIP, it definitely has worsened as a result of the storm. So those are new. So the new ones, we would continue with where we are, or where we were with our CIPs, but then we do have these new ones now that would require other work other than what I had mentioned to you earlier, like roofing, doors, spalling, toilets, things of that nature.
Those you can mandate be done within 60 days or 30 days.
Right now, that's the time we're working with.
Purchase orders you can issue
Yes.
within a number of days, right?
Well, that's what, Yes,
Small
certain
purchases,
ones.
so
You're right,
anything up to
small
250
purchases.
right now.
Yes.
You can issue within a number of days, and that means mold, electrical, all of that can possibly be done.
Yes, and we're going to take advantage of
Okay,
the
great. And
governor's
then-
declaration.
Yeah, so it's just these 4 regions that solicitation that went out for the CIP projects, those might have to be amended slightly because of typhoon damage as well.
Yes.
Add that in. But those, yeah, we're still looking realistically at maybe 60 more days, or even, that's realistic, 90 days, right?
Yeah.
So,
I mean, you know, Phil was correct, because like when we put out the IFBs for air conditioning, what was requested by the bidders was to actually give them additional time to go out to the schools to look at all the different, you know, units that we have, and we granted that time. But, you know, I know that in this case, time is of the essence, you know, for us to then get our schools really up and running before the opening of the school year.
all right, so, yeah, then, sure.
Just, Senator, just so we're on the same page, in line of all the assessments and the damages that the schools, again, the typhoon magnified the issues, but a lot of these issues were already frontline captured in a lot of our bid processing. So one of the strategies we have right now is where there's an overlap, we're continuing with these projects and moving it out. Where there's a difference, those assessments have to come in, they have to come in timely. Because like you said, and right now we're all in the tables agreeing, funding is not the issue. One of the things we have to do is within reasonable time frame, make the assessments, have the procurements exercise, and go out quickly so that we can operate within this 90-day period. And a lot of that, again, if we assess the scope of work and the specifications of what we need, then we can mirror it to what type of procurement needs to go through the process. And right now, for a lot of these critical emergency needs, I think it's going to fall under some small purchase procurements.
Okay, great.
Which again, like you said, mode remediation, some of the water damages, some of these immediate fixes, I think that will fall within line with those thresholds.
Okay, so if the procurement's 90 days, what construction period are you giving them for the 4 regions?
I believe we're doing 180 days.
180?
Yeah.
Okay. So, and then for FB, is that its own? So what is your estimate timeline for FB now?
Same thing for FB.
It's going to be 90-day
Yeah,
procurement,
yes.
but you're ready with the procurement for
Yes.
FB, so it's just going to be now hopefully 130 plus 180 days construction.
Right.
GW Gym, same? 180
GW was
days?
at 120.
120, that's just the gym part at least.
And we're at a point where the contractor, I believe, is going through the permitting process already. All bid bonds,
Okay, great.
performance bonds are in.
All right.
It's just
Simon
permitting.
Sanchez
Yeah.
looks like it's going to be a whole new, you're going to have to start on that one anew, but just especially for opening, right? But so maybe just later after this hearing, you could just tell us which schools need CIP projects to be completed before they're ready for, before we can even consider opening them. That would be FB for sure, perhaps Simon Sanchez at this point, right? Thank you. Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I think where we're coming from with that is that if the storm hadn't hit and we knew schools wouldn't be ready, then, and I know that we had kind of talked about this, Joe, in a meeting, which schools are we going to be able to get ready in the event that schools won't be open, so that we can kind of consolidate students at those different locations. So when you're going around looking at and tiering damages and which schools need CIP and which don't, if you could identify which schools you think are feasible for, you know, double session, because I'm getting the gist that we don't. Definitely, I don't like online. I don't think anybody does, and so I don't think that should be the first option. I think the first option should be physically attending school in another campus like we're doing with FB. I think that as difficult as that is, as many challenges as that poses to parents and like managing their schedules, I think that given the circumstances, is the best way that we can deliver an education to the kids, right?
Yeah, if I can just make 2 points to add value to what they were talking about earlier. Our efforts are really trying to continue to push the Tier 1 efforts. And again, I want to thank the principals. They're probably tired of hearing the tiers. It's like, we get it, right? We get the tiers. But, you know, it's really working on the procurement to getting them the supplies that they need. Because, again, a lot of this is they're buying it out of their pocket or they're getting it from somewhere else. So if we get them the materials and supplies that they need to complete their Tier 1 work, which is really a lot of manual labor and individuals coming in to volunteer. That's a big one. And then, of course, now that the storm has hit, we did have access to other agencies, but now through the EOC, and because we're a disaster recovery, we have more direct access to them. I mean, they're literally in the same room, and we're saying, hey, we need this cleared up. So we're hoping that that kind of pushes, the support from the other agencies. They did tell us that a lot of them right now are really on disaster recovery for the island, like roads and things like that. But once they've kind of taken care of that part, their focus is going to be helping DOE. So we're looking forward to that tier 2, because we know just based on our timelines, the tier 3 part where we have to contract with contractors, that probably won't be available to help us open schools. So it's really that aspect of it. But since we've met, we've had those committees kind of just brainstorming about other options about instructional time. And again, like you said, Senator, online is our last really resort. We're going to try and look at those other options.
Thank you, Joe. We did have the principal of Agata, Principal Perez, who she asked to come up and speak. I know that we're really tight on time, but I know you all came here to attend the hearing, and if there are any other principals or assistant principals who have anything else that they would like to add to the conversation, I'd also like to extend the opportunity for you to come up to the table and say anything that you like on the record. And so I guess we'll start with Principal Perez. Good morning. Doc.
Hi, good morning. And thank you for this roundtable, because we're hoping, although hope is not a strategy, we're hoping that this will move up the process in terms of getting our schools ready for our children. You can call each and every one of us here to say what's happening at the school and what issues we're facing, and we're pretty much all going to say the same thing. We've heard all of you say kudos to the work that we've done in terms of helping our community go, with this typhoon, this natural disaster. And while we appreciate that, I myself can't help to feel that when I walk out of this door, I'm still going to feel like I've been beaten, because we're still going to go back to the same thing at the school site. As I sat in the back and I listened to what's going on with this roundtable, I couldn't help but look around in this building. I asked the gentleman in the back when this building was built, and it was built in the 1940s, all right? And correct me if I'm wrong. But I'm looking around now, and it's almost restored to its tip-top shape. Our schools, okay, our public schools have been built in the 60s and maybe 70s, and they're all falling apart. And if the government can make it a priority to restore this historical building in its original shape, if not better, because obviously now it has aircon. If there are any buildings, government buildings, that would be in that same priority, it should be our schools, because that's where our children are being educated. That's where they come to us to be safe, to make sure that we get them ready for the future. But the situation that we're in now, that was compounded by the natural disaster, it looks very grim. And I'm wondering, besides our department, what is it that we can do as one government? One government, one people, we owe it to our kids to provide them a better and safer place. We've heard all the reasons why we can't get the schools running. But why? Look at this building. Our children deserve to come into a building and be educated in a building such as this. And I don't say this to be insulting. I say this because I care about our kids. They're our future, all right? And we do our best at the school site to do what we can to provide them a safe place to be educated. And some of our kids come to school because that's the only place that they feel safe. But they're all run down, and they're going to continue to be that if we don't make it a priority. Like I said earlier, there's only 1, 2, 3, 4 of you here sitting. The rest of you need to consider what is it that we can do together as one team, one government, minus all the excuses and the reasons. Procurement, for one, How can we help one another to make sure that that does not continue to be the same excuse why our schools are run down? We owe it to our children. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Paris, very much. Are there any other principals, system principals, who would like to come up and speak? Don't all rush up at once. Yeah, I agree with your statements, Dr. Paris, and that's a big reason why I introduced the bill that eventually became Public Law 37-4, is because I too am tired of the excuses, and I think that our kids deserve to go to school, and you're right, in facilities that are as well kept as this one. And that's why I'm not really trying to rush into tearing up that public law and throwing it out the window, because I feel like that is the one thing that is motivating us to work a little bit faster and a little bit harder, as hard and as fast as you are already working. And I feel like, given the track record of the government of Guam, it is what it is. If we tear this thing up and throw it in the trash can, what then? You know, are our students gonna continue to go to schools and facilities that are like the ones they're going to now, or are we gonna make the difficult choices that have to get done, you know, hopefully sooner rather than later? I mean, if we tear this bill up and throw it in the trash can and we say, oh, next school year, who knows what's gonna happen next school year? And do we wanna look at an interruption in learning now to, you know, kind of mitigate the typhoon damage, and then another significant interruption to come into compliance next school year? Or do we want to do the difficult work and finish everything in one shot? Because, you know, I believe that repairing Typhoon Mawar damage and coming into compliance with Public Law 37-4, I think that these are things that run parallel and end at the same destination. And so, again, you know, I'm considering it very greatly. Obviously, there are many challenges that we're facing as an island and as a department, not just with schools coming into compliance and you know, mitigating all of the new challenges that Typhoon Mawar has posed, but, you know, it's generally across our government. And so, ma'am, I thank you for coming up. I know you are the principal over at Weddingale, so you're very busy running the shelter, but if you could just identify yourself for the record and then proceed with your comments.
Okay. Good morning. Evangeline Iglesias, principal of Weddingale Elementary School. I'm also the lead administrator for the shelter site. But I'd like to recognize, I know that all my colleagues here have put so much into the preparation for this upcoming typhoon and all the typhoons that we've been through. And, you know, I can say that since I've done the shelter site at Upi Elementary way back during Pong Song Hwa, this typhoon matches closely to what we all have gone through. But I like to recognize that, you know, the shelter managers that are at the school sites prior to the preparation, the school staff, the people that rack, DOE has done so much, and I like to recognize that these employees that are sitting in front of you are first responders. You know, we are essential employees to the island. We respond to the needs of the community. But I think that we need to step up as a community to support the schools, because we constantly share our challenges. We are taking care of these shelterees at the school site, and I think that the challenges in meeting their needs needs to come forward with all the agencies to support. I know the government or DOE is trying their best to provide the needed supplies and equipment for the schools, but I think that I would like to see more support in regards to the shelters. I can speak about Weddingale. I'm a secondary shelter, but I became a primary because FB is not able to provide the support. But, you know, we do what we need to do. We have a very dedicated team of support, and I would like to give kudos to my partner for shift 1, Ms. Frida Ari. She's sitting back there. I mean, we had to prepare the shelter site. We have managed to go through the storm, at the height of the storm, for 30 hours, you know, without any communication, but with the communication of our phones, other than smoke signals that couldn't go through because of the typhoon. But other than that, I think DOE is to be applauded and to be recognized for being first responders. I mean, we always talked about GFD, we talked about GPD, we talked about JIC, but I think DOE needs to be recognized for what we're doing at the shelter site, and I welcome the senators to come out and visit and meet with these people. I also like to say that the Red Cross volunteers and the FEMA volunteers that have gone out to the shelter site have applauded and recognized that DOE should even share how we logistically plan our shelter sites, because they even told me, you know, Ms. Iglesias, you should train others on how to put out a shelter. And I said, wow, that's a really good compliment to hear that the 3 shelter sites that are open in the north, which is Estumbo, Maria Joa, and Weddingale, are recognized by Red Cross. So, you know, give us that encouragement to keep going. We have lost, some of our employees have lost their homes. Some of us here have not had power and water, but we still continue. This is what we do. And I just hope that we continue to get that support from the legislature in what the management team has provided to you today.
Thank you very much, ma'am. And yes, we do commend the hardworking employees of the Guam Department of Education. I mean, in so many ways, so many circumstances, you all continue to perform in a major way with really like minimal resources. And sometimes I wonder, how do you do it? You know what I mean? But at the end of the day, you do. So thank you very much. Thank you, ma'am. Senator Brown?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, I do want to point out, and we talk about this building. I mean, this building was a hollow shell for over 20 years from the time it was demolished. And you don't see the time of the damage that's going on here with the termites that I notice every time I get up here for a hearing. So, you know, Historic Preservation invested the money to restore this building. It was built in 1947. I remember because that's the year my mother was born. That's why I know it was built in 1947. But I agree with our chairman. I don't think we should take our foot off the pedal with regards to demanding and delivering performance. I've been on both sides of the aisle, as you have, Dr. Wampat, of being a legislator. We don't have the arms and legs to go in and do administratively what those of you in power have the ability to do. We've run agencies. I know what it's like to do a major operation and deliver on it and make sure that we stay consistent in following through. And the burden is really on you. I understand the concern. I mean, we're legislators. We can do legislation, but we can't go in and run your operation. And I've been on the roof of Simon Sanchez. I've been in a number of schools, you know, contributing. When I was at the port, we're the ones at Southern High School doing major, you know, infrastructure things that the department does not have the ability to do. But that burden really is on you. You come to us, but it is your procurement system. We're not in charge of your procurement system. We can assist policy-wise, but we're not the arms and legs that operate the department. I think, and I agree with the chairman, the pressure needs to maintain on the leadership of DOE, because ultimately, you are the ones that are in position to address that. Before it was always money, there was never enough money. And now there's money, and what are we getting? We can't process, we can't procure, we can't this, we can't that. But you know, it can be done. It's been done in other operations, and I'm just gonna say it back. You know, ultimately, you guys get to decide that, but I agree. I don't think we should put or remove the pressure. It's been too many years of not having that. I went through 9 years of public school, and I don't have a single complaint in the 9 years I spent in public school on Guam on the quality of education that I received, or have a classroom that I couldn't go into and get the education. And we didn't have air conditioning back then. The only thing air conditioned was the library to maintain the school books. So I've had a very positive experience in my years in public school on Guam, and somehow, somewhere along the way, that we're educating less kids, we're having more problems, and I just have to turn that back. That fully, for the short time left, Dr. Wampat, I won't be surprised you come back again, but for the short time in this interim you have left, it falls on your shoulders to deliver on that, because we as legislators cannot do that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you to everyone for being here.
Thank you, Senator Brown. If my colleagues have no further questions, and I don't think that they do, I would just like to, if we could wrap a little bit. So the measure that you were talking about when you mentioned the omnibus bills, you were asking for us to give you the authority to use ARP funds for payroll?
For payroll.
And then you want to use general fund monies for?
And then we use what we get from the government to use for the CIP projects.
And so,
we did that with ARA.
right.
So
And so is the thinking there that if you use the general fund monies, that we'll be able to avail of the reimbursements from FEMA?
no, we're going to. Oh no, we were told that we can't do federal for federal.
Right.
So
No.
so that we know.
But if you use the general fund monies to fix up, typhoon damages or whatever, are you anticipating a reimbursement?
You're right, and then the reimbursement, it's just, you're right, from our monies to go back rather to, for us to use for CIP projects without an expiration date. But we're hoping by tomorrow we would have an answer from them. And if they say yes, then the bill would be, this amendment is being requested.
Okay. And yeah, just to kind of echo what Senator Brown was saying, I'm not about putting pressure just for the sake of putting pressure. I just think that we're really at a unique juncture right now, given the blessing of the massive amount of federal monies that we have. So I don't want anyone here to think that, I'm trying to throw you under the bus and here accomplish this impossible task. I think that the body has done good work in enabling and providing tools, whether it be, shortening procurement protests or funding, right, with $20 million. I think that we have done our part to kind of give you the pathways and the tools and the resources, and it sounds like you do need more of those. And so we're reasonable in trying to enable you and give you the things that you need to accomplish the goal, which again is not necessarily compliance with Public Law 37-4, but really once and for all, setting a standard that our students deserved, decades ago, and that's really what it's about for me. So again, I don't want anyone here to think that we're just throwing this impossible task on you guys. We're always willing to listen and to, I'm not saying no right now. I'm saying that I'll consider it, but in hearing from Mr. Phil and Facilities and Maintenance and realizing that there wasn't any real significant damage caused by the typhoon, and in seeing that a lot of the purchases that can be made with emergency procurement, I'm very optimistic that we are going to still be able to move with our foot on the pedal and move forward, as long as we're moving forward. Yes, Joe?
Yeah, I think just to further clarify, although it would be nice if we just put the target date back to next year, but even without that, the discussion that we had is not so much our ability to be ready, because we acknowledge that, hey, if we fail, then we fail, and we'll work with that school and so on. But it's really more the timeline that public health has told us that they're able. So if there's a way that we can stay open while we're not being, while we're not inspected, but then once we're inspected, if we fail, then of course we'll shut down.
Right.
So
And
it's
I think
it's just a timeline.
I think, with all due respect to the committee chair for public health who's sitting right next to me, I think that that's a conversation that we have to have with public health. Because I'll just say, I thought it was very interesting that, for example, Simon Sanchez hasn't had a current sanitary permit since, 2014 or 2015, and yet now we're being told that, no one can open without a valid permit. So, I'm hoping that public health will provide some leniency. I think that there is wiggle room in the law. I think that we kind of foresaw the difficulty and the challenges, and we gave public health the ability to grant these variances. Now, whether or not they're being as lenient as we want them to be, especially given the new circumstances that we're all under, I think that's a conversation that we're definitely going to have. But I want to again commend you all for your hard work, and I want to close here, and I don't want to single him out. But I did want to recognize Principal Typhoon from Inalahan Elementary School. And I did want to end the note on this hearing on a positive note, because Principal Typhoon and Inalahan Elementary School, and this is something I don't know if you even heard about this in the media, but they passed their public health inspection. So I know we can do it. You guys are the hardest working department in the government of Guam. No offense to my other agencies under my watch, but you are. And I think that, many times you guys are given these tasks which people think are impossible, but yet the public school system keeps turning out great products. I'm a product of the public school system, and so I just want to commend Mr. Typhoon, and and he didn't do it alone either. It wasn't just his staff. It really takes the involvement of the PTOs. It takes a village, to quote a phrase. And so again, I want to recognize Mr. Tyspick. I don't know how inspection ready they are now, given that we just, took a major hit from this typhoon, but I just wanted to recognize him and his staff and his school on the record and kind of provide that example that we can do this, we can, and I believe in you guys. And so, that being said, I promised not to keep you so long. 2 hours, that's a new record for a hearing of mine. It's actually the shortest hearing I've ever had in my short stint as a senator. Thank you, Ash. So again, thank you all for coming out, and thank you, GDOE management, for all the information. We're going to take this back, and obviously we have many things to consider. So again, thank you all, and thank you all for attending. And this will conclude this roundtable hearing for the Committee on Education, Public Safety, and the Arts. It is adjourned at 11:30 Chamorro Standard Time. Guahusi Senador Chris Barnett está. Adios.